Hey guys, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I hope you enjoyed this interview. All right, welcome back to the program. My guest is joining me right now. He is Kelvin Emmanuel, the Chief Executive Officer at Dairy Hills, an economic analyst. Hello, Kelvin, and welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Good morning. Were you on the streets yesterday?
No, I wasn't.
Are you part of the protest?
How do I answer that
Ah,
question?
is it a yes or a no question?
Well, my own kind of protest is not on the street,
Okay.
but I am protesting government policy making. I'm just doing it from a systemic point of view.
Okay, what are you protesting about? What are you protesting? Is your protest in line with the end bad governance protest, their demands?
I've seen the list of the demands. I think some of them are realistic, they're overdue. The one on the justice ways judicial reforms, the demand on the Stephen Orasanya report, the size of governance, is too bloated. And President Tinubu raised the number of MDAs, ministries. The number of MDAs are still 262. The budget you have today is not enough. I mean, you could see that the windfall tax on banks, which I oppose, by the way, is meant for propping up the minimum wage that has been increased by 133%, 30 trillion naira for recurrent expenditure to mark up the minimum wage and 3.2 trillion for capital expenditure. The question is, minimum wage, like they say, is one time. Who will pay the bill next year? Are you going to reduce the minimum wage next year? So if you take a one-time windfall tax to prop up minimum wage, who is going to pay the bill next year? Which means your budget deficit will increase. How do you raise the revenue? So
Perhaps they're being a bit pessimistic too. Perhaps they will sell more oil.
Well,
yes.
The reality on the ground.
Production could also be.
The reality on the ground does not support us getting to 2 million barrels per day within the next 12 months. It's not realistic. The last time you did a deep offshore investment.
What if they surprise us?
There's no surprise, Nancy. There are only 34 drilling rigs currently in Nigeria.
Say facts are facts.
The facts are facts. You can't. They are stubborn facts. There are only 34 drilling rigs currently in Nigeria. There's the issue of contracting cycle, middlemen, Nigerian Local Content Logic Act. There's the issue of carried costs that the IOCs have constantly complained about for production sharing contracts and unregistered joint ventures. These are issues, that is making IOCs not to come in to invest in Nigeria, because usually when they put up their cost, NNPC is not able to take up their own counterparty cost. And deep offshore, you have 60 to 40 sharing formula, 60% NNPC that's representing the government and 40% for the IOCs. So back to this question on the demands, are they realistic? I think the issue about bringing petrol prices below 200 naira per litre is unrealistic.
Really?
Considering the exchange rate. Who is to blame for the exchange rate? The government. And government is a continuum. So can you say, President Buhari's government mostly led us to where we are, and you shouldn't blame President Tinubu for it? No, because at the end of the day, the person who is in the office in Aso Rock, he has 100% of the blame. I would say some of the demands are not refined. The areas where the protesters should demand for are not being paid attention to, and they are mostly focusing on outcomes than the real foundation and roots of the problems.
Okay, if you're saying it's not realistic, because I was listening to many protesters yesterday, and some did say, bring down the price of fuel. That if you bring down the price of fuel, everything will come down.
Who will pay for the difference?
But there's already hold on, Kelvin, there's already a difference now.
Yes.
And the government is paying for it. Whoever is paying, they're paying. Because even though I was told, was it yesterday or so, that in many parts of the country too, a liter of petrol is going for 1,000 and even more than that. Here in Abuja, we're buying for like 600, 700.
Because there is no petroleum equalization fund.
Now, but the issue is there's still someone is paying for the difference now. Because if we're supposed to do all things being equal, the price of petrol should be more than it is right now. Perhaps even like 1,500, a liter of fuel. So there's still a subsidy, as it were. Who is paying? We know, no. Nobody wants to be transparent about it. So if the protesters are saying that reduce the price of fuel back to, in fact, I heard someone say, is it 100 or less than 200 naira? You said it's not realistic. But is it realistic to bring it down to sell less than 700 or 500 naira?
Nancy,
and the government pays
Nancy,
the
we
difference.
have to go back to fundamental issues. What are the fundamental? And let's unbundle this oil and gas issue that deals with petrol prices in Nigeria and security of supply. Number one, let's look at sections 109 of the PI, domestic crude oil supply obligations. That says that you have to give crude oil to people who actively are operating crude oil refineries in Nigeria. The question now is, currently as NNPC is structured, do they have the feedstock to give Dangote? Completely? No. Why not? Because of all the FSAs and crude oil swap deals, the FSAs on for sale agreement, the debts that are owed, So if you don't have the crude oil to give him, right, and if he's having to import crude oil, what is going to be his unit production cost per barrel for PMS? What price is he going to offer the market? Direct distribution and then the independent marketers. What price is he going to offer the market at? Is the government going to pay him subsidy? These are the questions we need to answer. Considering the exchange rates and the price of crude oil in the market right now, which is over $85 for Brent and about $82 to $80 for WTI. Yeah, the heavy crude and the light crude. Is it realistic to say that Dangote is going to produce PMS at a unit cost per liter that is below 500 naira? I don't think so.
Now, Kelvin, I understand what you're saying. What many Nigerians are thinking is that that sector, that subsidy, and that was what we were told, that there's a scam around subsidy.
Yes,
so
because Nigeria does not consume 70 million liters of PMS on a daily basis. And even if you take it off,
if you say there's even a scam around it, should ordinary Nigerians on the streets pay for the inefficiency of your system? Why not take off that corruption? Because why I'm asking this is that many Nigerians, that subsidy was the only thing they thought that they get from the country as an oil-producing country. Many Nigerians on the street yesterday protested that this is the only thing we get from government. And as well as I know, that you're talking about petrol, you're talking about energy. It's not hydra-headed, it dovetails into every other thing. Because of the removal of subsidy, it has exacerbated inflation, food inflation, and all of that. So people are just saying, why not just even reverse this thing, not even bring it down to cool off the economic situation first? After all, there's a price you are paying now for partial subsidy or whatever you want to say it is, though you're not coming out straight to say that, even though I know that President Tinubu knows because he got out during Gelale to announce that. So a few months ago, I think we were even together when he announced it some months ago, and we debated it. So why not just bring it down a bit to cool off? I hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
So there's a first problem. The first problem is there are two major determinants of the price of PMS: exchange rate and the price of crude oil. None of these two factors are in our favor in the sense that we don't have a comparative advantage with any of these two factors. If the exchange rate was still at 750, if you don't have the issues you have around gross to net reserves that the CBN has to do balance of payments, the CBN doesn't have the monies today, as we speak, to do balance of payments for 1 year. They don't net reserves. I'm not talking about what the gross reserves that the spokesperson keep announcing. They don't have it. If you don't have it, you're going to have pressure on your currency. Can the government alone supply the FX? Well, there are issues around NNPC that I've talked about, the issues around the way upstream is structured and the amount of FX. For example, NLNG just paid dividends and taxes. They paid dividends, and I hear NNPC says they're going to use dividends to reconcile fuel subsidy payments. Okay? Now, on the independent side, the autonomous FX market, is there FX to supply the market so that you have FX for the independent marketers to be able to import this product?
So what you're saying in essence is that because of where our exchange rate is now, whatever is even being done, petrol price will still be high.
It will still be high.
That's what
if the exchange rate was at 750, it would have been different. But the exchange rate is not, because you don't have FX to meet up with your balance of payment obligation.
Okay, let me ask this question now. Since the president has said crude should be sold to local refiners,
It's
In
provided
Naira.
for in the PI.
Yeah, in Naira.
Yes.
Yes. Hold on. If crude should be sold to local refiners in Naira. In fact, there was a question that I got, I think 3 days ago from a viewer that did ask, okay, why not the NNPC? This is just how people are thinking. Why not the NNPC give Dangote the crude that we need here to refine for daily consumption?
There's a value trade-off. There's a value trade-off mismatch.
Now exchange rates meet, it will not affect that.
There's a value trade-off mismatch.
Will it? No, hold on. Will it affect it?
Okay, so that is what the DSDP was about, the direct sale, direct purchase. And how did that end? It didn't end well.
No. Will it affect it, the exchange rate component?
Well,
if it's done that way.
It depends.
To say, okay, instead of NNPC importing, Dangote should refine, give us the refined one. We'll use it for our consumption here, local consumption.
There's a value trade-off mismatch. And the reason why I say there's a value trade-off mismatch is that PMS is only 43% derivatives of crude oil.
Exactly.
Yeah, there are 7 or 8 different other products. There's even refinery gas or propane that is used for
some
LPG.
other stuff, yes.
Yeah, there is asphalt for bitumen binders. There is base oil for lubricants. There's petroleum coke. So the question is, how do you calculate that value trade-off mismatch? If you give him crude oil and you collect PMS is only one of 9 derivatives.
Exactly. But
is there transparency enough in government to be fair to Nigerians to make sure that value trade-off mismatch is not done at the expense of the commonwealth of the people? That's a question you need to ask.
But can it be done?
Well,
can it be done?
It is an interesting point.
Fantastic.
And to be honest with you, even the 7.2% that NNPCL holds in Dangote refinery that they paid $1 billion in cash with, yes, they can use dividends from that to offset subsidy payments that goes to Dangote at a specific price that is set for the government. There are ideas around how this can be structured.
Thank you very much. So you've come to that the ideas that we should put on the table.
The question now is how can you, because when you start a refinery is not like a car that you can on and off. When you start, it takes time to fully get a refinery working. When you start a refinery, you cannot turn it off. If you turn it off, there will be mechanical damage to the refinery. There will be mechanical damage to the refinery. So it means you need to constantly keep supplying it feedstock. And you need 650,000 barrels of crude oil a day to get full capacity. Where is it going to source it from?
Okay. This is getting interesting, but I'm liking where our conversation is heading. I don't know if you're also feeling what I'm... It's interesting conversation there, and this kind of conversations should be what should be actually in public too. I hope you understand what I'm saying in terms of not technical, but creative and innovative conversations around this. We've looked at this interesting part, which is one of the demands of the protesters, take off subsidy. So let's go to another area, which is now not really related to part of what the protesters are demanding. But if we take a look at even Africa Development Bank yesterday, the focus report, I don't know if you saw it, that Nigeria's inflation is higher than the West African average and the African average. Of course, our inflation is at 34%. That's food inflation too high. African Development Bank also said that 18 states in Nigeria, that's half of our states in Nigeria, the citizens there, are very, very poor. Just to pose that to even the optics of what is happening right now as to this president is seen as someone that wants to attract foreign investment. Of course, after he came in, he traveled to a few countries and said, come in, guys, we are ready for business. So with this hardship protest now that has been exacerbated by high cost of food, in fact, the high cost of living crisis, how would you walk me through your reaction about that and what the African Development Bank is saying?
The inflation numbers, if you look at the CPI basket, 52% is food, okay? And when you look at food inflation, it's a multi-layered, hydra-headed problem. That's the way I like to look at it, because it's not just from local primary production in Nigeria, it's also from imports, which is exchange rate-induced inflation. If you go to most of the manufacturing companies in Kano, in Ogun State, in Lagos, and you speak to their senior executives, their CFOs, their CEOs, their top management executives, and ask them what their issues are, they'll tell you one of the problems they have is the fact that they have to import raw materials to produce. For example, I'll give you an example. The FMCGs that produce sweetened sugar beverage, they use about 30% of sugar as their input for manufacturing. Currently, as we speak, there are only 3 companies allowed to import sugar in Nigeria, which is not supposed to be. These 3 companies, there is a case that might be made that is the pricing on sugar transparent when you import raw sugar from Brazil or India and fortify it and you sell it to the market? Is it transparent? There's a case that might be made, okay? So if that goes into their production, they pass on the cost to the consumers. You have exchange rate induced inflation. That's one problem. The other problem...
Why can't we even produce sugar in this country? Is it not from sugar cane? What is there?
Well,
it's just like we import toothpick too.
Right. You know, so this import restriction was tied to backward integration, which is under the National Sugar Master Plan. Has it been followed? No. There are 4 phases in that NSMP document. Nigeria is still at phase 1. The phase 1 says that you must hit 170,000 metric tons. That's phase 1 target. We're still at phase 1. We've not even crossed to phase 2. Okay? And there's the issue of setting up sugarcane plantations and using that sugarcane to produce raw sugar and to produce ethanol. Okay. There is also the issue of the local side, the bandit tax in the Northwest. Yeah? Nancy, people are illegally mining gold in Nigeria and they are smuggling it into the Middle East today.
So whose fault is that?
Well, the security agencies. Because food is part of the national security basket. So a threat to your food security supply should be a threat to national security. Is
it within our control to have adequate and good security in the country?
It is within our control.
I took this with the special advisor to the president on economy. Was it 2 days ago? So when he tried to convince me that COVID, I was like, hey, just hold on, Dr. Fashua. So what you're trying to say is that some of the things that we're doing right now that would have encouraged backward integration, we aren't doing them.
We're not doing them because it's been sabotaged. There's also the issue of the input that goes into food production, fertilizer. Fertilizer went from under 5,000 a bag to over 40,000 a bag. Nancy, exchange rates, muriate of potash, phosphate. That one you can argue for, muriate of potash was hampered with the issue in Eastern Europe, Ukraine and Russia. You can argue a case for that. There's the issue of seeds. There's the issue of the price of diesel for land opening and land preparation. To use a tractor per day, you have to spend about 120 to 150,000 to rent the tractor. To use a tractor for a full day, you have to spend about 150 to 200,000 worth of diesel.
Because tractors are scarce.
Tractors are scarce.
Yes.
So these are the fundamental problems. So when you go and you share rice as palliative, and I understand that the temporary solution for removing duties and levies for 150, 100, it's a good solution, okay? It's also good to remove some of those import restrictions, but how sustainable is it? How long are you going to keep that? How long until you say, okay, we've done that, we're going to roll over and keep on with our backward integration program? The levies you introduced on wheat and sugar, 15 and 30%, the funds that were generated from that, which is supposed to be a backward integration levy, how much did you actually invest in the backward integration programs to ensure that you build local or domestic capacity? There were rumors that some of the funds from the wheat backward integration levy was used to fund Hajj. And now EFCC has invited the Hajj chairman to come and answer questions on how the last Hajj this thing was spent.
This is actually part of why the protesters are on the streets, that the governance system in Nigeria is misaligned. We are not being governed well. People are not using government funds well. There's this perception that people in authority and power are not there for the welfare of the people, but for their own selfish interests.
Well, this is the reason why, Nancy, I'll tell you that we have strong men in Nigeria and not strong institutions. And we have to come to the point where the chairman of EFCC says that we have sufficient evidence. We've done our investigation to establish a prima facie that we have a case against this person who is currently sitting in government, and they don't have any interference in prosecuting that person.
Okay, you were making.
Well, Nancy,
No, go ahead.
The fundamental issues that we're supposed to tackle that leads to food inflation is not being tackled. You know, the president says he wants to spun out livestock development from Ministry of Agriculture, and I'm saying that it's an indictment on the performance of the Minister of Agriculture that the president is considering taking animal husbandry, which is a major department in the Ministry of Agriculture, away from him.
Okay. All right. If you can hear me, please go ahead with your comments. You have about 30 seconds. Okay, what's happening with the network this morning? All right. You're talking about the livestock ministry, in terms of taking it out from.
Nigeria imports $2 billion worth of milk every year from Europe. $2 billion. We have 24 million heads of cattle producing less than 2 liters of milk per day. What's the explanation for that?
Okay, so let's take this comment from Agu Anweze in Lagos. He says, looting is massive and the president turned his face to the other side chasing shadows. What's the president doing with 48 ministers? He should reduce the number to 6, one from each geopolitical zones. We shouldn't have a minister for Abuja when the president is at Abuja. He's here in Abuja. I don't think so. That's my own opinion. So should the president be overseeing nations of the state and also Abuja? But what's your view about what Wiz is asking?
Well, there's a case, some people are saying that Abuja should be a state. I don't think it should be because it's a federal capital territory. Some others are saying Abuja should have a mayor and that the way the Abuja FCT is set up, it's a conduit for, misappropriation. So I agree that the number of ministries should be reduced drastically. I think 6 is too low. I think anywhere between 12 and 15 is fine. But this federal character system we practice, system of compensatory governance, where you must settle everybody from each state before you know that you have a federal character position or structure at the center, is part of the problems we have. People should be appointed based on competence and merits, not based on, I'm from Kwara. You have to produce a candidate from Kwara. Nancy.
No, when I talked about would ethnic sentiments allow us
this comes
to
back,
be able, because we're talking about merit. But the other question is, amongst the ethnic groups or even regions, wouldn't you see people that have merits there?
Nancy, do you want to keep saying my person is represented at the center? Or I have good health care. I have quality education. I have good roads. I have constant electricity. We don't answer this question. We don't ask critical questions enough. These primordial sentiments that politicians resort to when election comes, to say, you're from so-so place, so you should vote certain way because you're representing your people and you're protecting your people's interests. Are they really protecting their people's interests? Do the primordial sentiment of, I'm from Brass in Bayelsa State, also I should have a minister of the Federal Republic that comes from my place over, is the minister implementing deep water fiscals for gas reforms to supply gas to NLNG and to supply gas to the domestic market based on the domestic gas delivery obligations of sections 118 of the PIA? Are they drilling enough crude oil? Are the refineries working? These are the questions.
Those are the KPIs.
These are the issues, not the primordial sentiment of my person is represented at the center.
Now we did it, so it's time for our own national.
What has he fetched them so far? At the best, they meet him and he says, okay, take 50,000 naira or a bag of rice and a gallon of cake. How long is it going to last you?
Okay. Let's take a look at another question that we're getting from Stephen here in Maitama. The Apex Bank and commercial banks official scheduled to meet the president for express permission to impose windfall levy. The greatest disadvantage windfall levy tax, it passes the burden of this gains levy or tax on consumers to maintain their profit margins, thereby driving the cost up for consumers. My question is, what is the Apex Bank doing to address these extortive demands on the poor masses? Any answer? Though you had said earlier on that you're not in support of the windfall tax.
I've not seen the position of the central bank on the windfall tax.
It's not within their purview.
Well, financial system stability, banking supervision regulates the banks. And they had sent a memo a few months ago.
No, please come again.
They regulate the banks.
They do regulate the banks.
And they sent a memo a few months ago asking the banks to hold their revaluation gains, which constitutes this windfall tax. The question we should ask.
From them, actually.
No, it wasn't from them.
Yes.
But I've not seen their position on the issue. The questions we should ask, Nancy, for example, number one, was there a policy costing document for this exercise? Does it meet up with the principle of legitimate expectation for tax policy? It's a global standard anywhere in the world. The banks have closed their books for 2023-2024 financial year. How come 70% windfall tax is coming after they close their books for 2023-2024? Number 4, are all the gains realized? Realized means that they've closed the open positions. Unrealized means the positions are still floating. The Group MD of FCMB came out, Ladi Balogun came out and said that for FCMB, only 10% of those windfall, of those gains has actually been realized. So the question is, what are you going to tax?
Okay. More questions, more questions. Let's talk about, okay, let me take this question coming in. This is from Hussein in Benue State, precisely Makurdi. Vibrant young man you haven't said. My question is this: don't our governments know this problem? Why do we find thinking out of the box an issue always? Any answer for that? Because it seems that the answers are a bit easy, or the solutions. It's like every Nigerian knows what the problems are, and perhaps even the solution. But getting the solutions done are difficult.
The reason why this is difficult to implement the solution is because there are vested interests and there are tough realities on the ground. It takes time. What Nigerians don't want to hear from the president right now, in the midst of this end bad governance protest, is the president coming to tell them, be patient with me. They don't want to hear that. And I see the both sides of the argument. But the reality on the ground today is that there are no overnight solutions. There's no magic one. There's nobody anywhere in the world that can come to Nigeria today as a consultant to the federal government of Nigeria that can say, I have a bullet solution that can end Nigeria's problem within 2 weeks. Nowhere.
How about the part that Nigerian authorities, the leaders, are living frivolous lives at the expense of many Nigerians that are poor? Some months ago, in fact, and I did put it here on the screen, here in Abuja, Maitama is a highbrow center in Abuja. The dustbin area, that's where the refuse dump, where these public people come to take refuse dump. A child was found there, a child of about 7, 8 years, a boy, eating from the refuse dump. And I took that picture here on the screen. And this is the same place where the rich have houses, where even perhaps government authorities are.
Nancy, inflation has priced millions of Nigerians.
Do you
out
understand
of the
what
market.
I'm trying to say?
Yes.
In the same place, the gap between the haves and the haves-not is so wide.
Nancy, inflation has priced millions of Nigerians out of the market. A carton of Indomie now is 8,000 naira. I think there's Hungry Man is
Noodles
like
11,000.
is
Noodles is even elite food now. We are talking of gari now. Don't even
China,
talk noodles.
In China, the percentage of the average household income that goes to food is 6%. In Nigeria, it's 52%.
Kelvin, let's talk about states. We saw yesterday different some state governors coming out, I think Edo State, coming out to the protesters. Some state governors have also imposed curfews. I wasn't particularly happy. I was really saddened with what I saw in Kano State, what Boso Tijani is trying to do. People going there and, looting and destroying those places. Do you also think that the anger of Nigerians are a bit one-sided towards the central government, which is Tinubu? Everybody's saying, Tinubu, Tinubu, Tinubu. How about the 36 states plus 1 in Abuja? Situating the fact on that many states now are getting more naira. But like I mentioned yesterday, some state commissioners of finance have also been telling me, Nancy, hold on now, we are getting more money now, but inflation is also eating into it.
Well, first of all, I'm not holding brief for Nigerian Governors Forum. I like to be very balanced in my view. I don't believe in most people are not happy with so I have to join the bandwagon, okay? It is important to situate this conversation and say that the external debts and the domestic debt states has also gone up.
Because of the adjustments.
Because of the revaluation of FX and because of pendency on
naira.
interest rates, from MPRO hikes, okay? MPR is now 26.75%, okay? The domestic debts they hold has gone up. The yields are falling for the domestic, the state government bonds they took, the state commercial bank loans they took, the external debts that they hold, the FX revaluation loss interest they have to pay has gone up. So it's important for us to put this context. But given that as it may, it's important to also say that the president is the cause of his problems. And the reason I say this is because you have a federal structure where everybody, at the end of the month, the Attorney General, Accountant General of the State, and Commissioner of Finance are coming to Abuja for FAC meeting and sharing of money. That's what it is, sharing of money. we need a fiscal federating unit system, okay? And this calls back to the issue, the elephant in the room, Nancy. Elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about because of politics. Anytime I bring up these questions in private conversations, I'm always told the president will start after 2027. That's if he wins.
What is the elephant?
Because if he goes and he touches that nest, which is revisit the issues around equity of states, population, landmass, IGR, and derivation. If you give the states their resources, I'm not that is a very big word. He asks them to generate their own revenues and not come to Abuja to share money.
Then they give some to the
center. The people will shift the focus from the center. Because this sharing formula of 55, 29, 16. Now, what the president did with local government autonomy is a masterstroke. I celebrate the president for that.
That's 52, 26, 20. You're talking about the federation.
The federation structure.
Yes, 50, 26, 20.
Yeah. What he did with LG autonomy is a masterstroke. Good kudos to the Attorney General of Federation. I encourage them to continue with the action plan they have to move elections from SEC to either INEC or a local government independent electoral commission to ensure that FAC is paid independently. The chairman of the local governments are held accountable. Local governments are funded. Local council development authorities are not funded. That the state allocation, there's no joint account allocation committee, the states and local government. Local government is local government, state government is state government. Okay? It's commendable. But the president needs to understand that the real elephant in the room here is the states have to generate their own revenue and be held accountable for the monies they generate. And that can only come if you revisit the issue of fiscal federalism, the principles of derivation. Until we revisit that issue, all this thing of, do we have enough revenues at the end of the month? Accountant General has flown into Abuja. Commissioner of Finance is behind them. And they're coming to Treasury House to calculate FAC and share money. It's not working.
Okay. Brendan from Ebonyi State says, why is our president not replying or addressing the situation? Why aren't they providing an ending solution to this? Why remove the fuel subsidy? I think we talked about the removal of fuel subsidy earlier. Let me also take this. My name is Chris. He's saying, please tell your guests to leave the issue of reality and face the issue of tribalism, bitterness, and hatred religious. How do you handle a nation where the so-called geopolitical regions refuse to work as one? Country where crude oil is everywhere, but no refinery is working. Another comment, why is Mr. President not talking about repairing our country's refinery instead of exporting and importing crude oil? I think Mele Kyari has come out to say, and also the Minister of State Oil, that it's okay, we're in August now, that the Port Harcourt refinery will start working this month, and the Kaduna by December. So let's give them some slack, isn't it? See.
Well, the question is, do Nigerians believe them? Because of how many times they've promised.
That's another question. Okay. Simon Akatsu is asking, I think there's a misunderstanding of the economy system on the part of ordinary Nigerians and media personnel. Subsidy removal was as a result of the country being broke, and one of the ways to arrest is the subsidy removal. Kelvin is spot on. Okay, many Nigerians do not think that, and that was why we had that argument earlier that Nigeria, the narrative that time was that, oh, Nigeria, we are going bankrupt, we are going broke because we are,
Nancy, you had FX subsidy, 4 trillion. You have petrol subsidy, 7.2 trillion. You have power subsidy, 2 trillion.
But there was the underlying issue to that, which you mentioned earlier. We don't know how many liters we consume. In this country, I had 35 million liters, 50, 65, 70. You also in this country, the Comptroller General of Customs disagreed with the NNPC Limited at a time.
I think we don't consume more than 35 million liters.
How do you know
They
that?
have to provide empirical evidence to show
exactly.
that we consume more than 35 million liters daily. We don't.
Okay. Jigas, Sani Ibrahim Jigas is saying, I'm really enjoying your conversation very well. Thank you. Everything in this country can work very well only on one and only one condition. Kill corruption by prosecuting every corrupt action. That's actually one of the demands of the protesters too, in terms of corruption.
I think the retired justice of the Supreme Court, Aisha Ogi, Highness or Excellency, I don't know how to address her. She was speaking at the Ike Mokede Foundation lecture on reforming public service in Nigeria. And she mentioned that people always point accusing fingers at the judges, but they don't talk about the judicial workers, okay? And how that contributes to the rots in the judiciary, okay? So for me, I think, it's important that we realize that institutions are greater than individuals. And until we address having strong institutions. National Assembly, the judiciary, the executive, and we leave this idea that government is the avenue for you to hammer, we will not make progress.
Okay. I think we'll leave it at that. Strong institutions for Africa. That was what Barack Obama said when he came to Ghana, when he was the president of the U.S. At that time. Thank you very much, Kelvin,
for having me.
Coming on the show and your insight. Thank you, everyone, also that have tried to call us, and the network no agree. But let's see if we can do that again sometime next week. Thank you for your messages. At least those who sent messages to our WhatsApp number. For those that we can't take, please bear with us. We'll take them subsequently. Be safe out there. Be the best you can be, and be the change that you want to see. I am Nancy Naji. Bye now. Thank you for watching. In case this is your first time watching us, thank you. Don't subscribe to the channel, drop your comments as well as like, and most of all, share our content.